friends. Now we are going to study critical appreciation of the poem, as per SSC Maharashtra State Board revised pattern. This is very important and scoring part of question paper. Let's study. Critical appreciation of the poem means to evaluate and analyze a poem in order to have its better understanding. This question is asked of 5 marks. It should be right in paragraph form as per given points. A poem will given for reference. Marks distribution will like this. Name of the poem and poet. Write in short about the poet and poem. For 1 mark, point out the poem's rhyme scheme. For 1 mark, figures of speech and tone of the poem. For 1 mark, write central idea of the poem in brief around 4 to 6 sentences. For 2 marks, conclude the appreciation of the poem with the message it conveys. You can write why do you like the poem. Life is a poem composed by Charlotte Bronte. This is a motivational poem. The poet narrates a positive view of life. The tone of the poem is optimistic. The rhyme scheme of the poem is abkba. Figures of speech is like. Metaphor, personification are used in the poem. The central idea of the poem is that the bad things of life are transient and good things invariably follow them. The poet wants to deal optimistically with the negative experiences of life. She believes in the idea that tomorrow is another day and rejects those thoughts which say that tomorrow never comes. We must be optimistic and have the courage to overcome any mishaps or problems. The happy moments of our life fly by very quickly and merrily. We must enjoy them happily. I like the poem, as it reminds us that even if there are problems in life, there will be better days ahead. Courage can suppress pessimism and we can emerge victorious despite all obstacles that pull us down, if we hold on to hope in our life. Have you ever seen? Is an interesting and humorous poem. The poet is unknown. The rhyming scheme of the poem is ab. Figures of speech like interrogation and pun are used in the poem. The poem is a brain teaser, which uses pun. Many words in English language have more than one meaning. The poet has created an amusing Have you ever seen? Is an interesting and humorous poem. The poet is unknown. The rhyming scheme of the poem is ab. Figures of speech like interrogation and pun are used in the poem. The poem is a brain teaser, which uses pun. Many words in English language have more than one meaning. The poet has created an amusing effect by playing around with such words. The reader is expected to enjoy the play on words and appreciate how the same words can have different meanings. I like the poem only because of various puns, where words with same spelling have different meanings. Leaving this aspect, I don't like the poem as it doesn't have any message or moral. Invictus is a poem by William Ernest Henley, inspired by events in his lifetime. The poem is all about showing courage in the face of death and of their will to survive with dignity in the face of severe hardships. The rhyming scheme of the poem is a bab. The poem can be sung, as it has rhyming words and rhyming scheme. The figures of speech frequently used are repetition, simile, and antithesis. The poet tells us that we must have courage and strength. Our actions are the result of our own feelings and we must take the responsibility for everything that happens in our life. The poet wants to thank God for his unconquerable soul. He tells us that We are the captain of our body. We are responsible for all good things and bad things that happen in our life. We should not accept defeat during adverse situations, as we know that every dark cloud has a silver lining. I like the poem, as it is very inspiring and teaches us never to get disheartened and keeps on moving forward in life. It makes a great effect on me. Somebody's Mother by Mary D'O'Brien is a simple and touching poem. A young boy helps an old woman to cross the street, thinking that when his own mother is in need of help in his absence. The rhyming scheme of the poem is abc. Figures of speech are simile and tautology are used in the poem. The poem talks about human behavior. It tells us that we should not ignore the poor, aged and needy, when it is possible for us to help them. The old woman, who was old, ragged and grey, was bent with the chilling winter on the crossing of the street, where snow has fallen recently. Her feet were aged and slow. She waited for a long time, and was even scared that she might be pushed aside by the careless crowd. A boy helps a frightened old lady to cross the street. I like the poem very much, because it touches human values. It brings in front of us the bitter truth that we have become ignorant towards our duties towards poor, needy and aged people. Autumn is a short and beautiful poem by Khalida Zand, translated by Professor A.W. Ryder in English. Autumn has been personified and there are beautiful images of nature in this poem. The rhyme scheme of the poem is a Std. The tone of the poem is light. There are figures of speech, like simile, metaphor, personification and onomatopoeia are used for poetic effect. The poet has described the beauty of the season autumn by personifying it to a beautiful maiden. The poet says, "Autumn is maiden fairy, because it is said to be slender and graceful. She is dressed in flowers of grasses. During night time, she wears a crown of countless stars on her forehead. Her robes are the pale white moonlight, which has been set free from cloudy patches. She looks like a slender maid, who will soon grow into a woman." I like the poem, as it is filled with imageries and natural beauty. We also get the moral that we should try to change ourselves as per situation, because our life becomes how take it. Silver is probably the best English poem on the visible effects of moonlight on a countryside. It is written by Walter de la Mare. The poet has described the magical effects of the silvery moonlight on the countryside. The rhyme scheme of the poem is A, B, B, and so on. The poem is in rhyming couplets. Figures of speech like personification, repetition and alliteration are used. The poet describes the beauty of moonlit night. He talks about the moon as if it is a woman, wailing slowly and quietly in the night. He says that the shiny, silver light of the moon is the shoes. The poet beautifully describes how everything in his surroundings appears to be silver in color due to the reflection of the shiny moonlight in the darkness. I like the poem because of the serene scene it portrays. The imagery is beautiful, with words like silver and silvery mentioned in the second line of every couplet. Their Road Not Taken is a famous and beautiful poem, written by Robert Frost. The poem is about the journey of life and what he decides when he is at the crossroads. The rhyme scheme of the poem is a B. The figure of speech. Alliteration is used in the poem for musical effect. Repetition and inversion are also used in the poem. The poem reflects on how the poet made all the difference by choosing a road which was less traveled. This is a symbolic poem, in which the image of two roads means the availability of two options, and taking the less traveled road stand for opting a rare path. The poem is about the journey of life and what the poet decides when he is at the crossroads. He tells us about a time that he came across two roads that diverged in a wood. He knew that he could not travel both, so he took the road which was not as well traveled as the other. It made a difference in his life. I like the poem because it makes me think of my actions when I am faced with various options. Please listen is the poem of dealing with importance of listening others. The is anonyms. The poem is in free verse, so there is no rhyme scheme. There are not many figures of speech in the poem. The use of repetition is more for impact. The poem is about the importance of listening, which requires one to pay full attention to what the other person is saying and understanding. A teenager addressing his elders that all he asks is that the person should listen or hear, not to talk or advice. Advice is cheap. If the listener wants to talk, he should wait a minute for his turn, and then the poet will listen to him. He feels that prayers work because God just listens to us silently when we pray. God is silent and doesn't try to give advice for fix things, but lets us work things out by ourselves. I like the poem because it is easy to read and understand. It is a conversational style poem. The poem tells us, instead of giving advice, listen others' problem silently. Danson is a story poem by Hazrat Inayat Khan. The poem is in couplets. The rhyme scheme is A, B, B, C, C, D, D. There are many figures of speech in the poem, like exclamation, alliteration, repetition. This is the beautiful story of Akbar's appreciation of Danson's singing, his meeting with Danson's teacher, that is a Std, and what he felt during this meeting. The poet wishes to convey that one can reach great heights in one's field if one becomes unworldly and devotes one's talents to someone or something higher than mere human beings. I like the poem because it is in the format of a story and easy to understand. It narrates about how Akbar, after appreciating Danson's singing, goes to meet Danson's Std and what Akbar learns there. Stay connected with our YouTube channel for e-lessons of English language study, writing skills, textual English prose and poetry of Standard 8, 9 and 10.